This news blast is brought to you by Qberg, Pittsburgh's source for LGBTQ plus news and community information. To learn more about Qberg, visit their website at qberg.com. That's QBURGH.com. From the PEP Radio Newsroom, this is our morning news blast for February 28th, 2025, taken directly from Qberg.com. Pennsylvania State Representative Robert Leadbeter, the Republican from Columbia County, has made his intentions clear. He wants to criminalize drag performances and, by extension, LGBTQ plus public life in the Commonwealth. In a memo circulated to his colleagues, Leadbeter announced plans to introduce a bill that would make it a third-degree felony for anyone to allow a minor to attend a drag show. Let's be absolutely clear about what this means. This bill would effectively criminalize pride celebrations across Pennsylvania. Leadbeter's memo frames his proposal as a necessary step to protect children from sexually suggestive themes, provocative outfits, and explicit language. Well, then you better not take them to Hooters, just saying. But let's examine the language of his proposed legislation, shall we? He argues that the Pennsylvania's current corruption of minors law, already disturbingly broad, should explicitly include drag shows. The phrasing is intentionally vague, opening the door for sweeping interpretations. Would a drag queen reading books at a library be considered criminal? Would minors attending a drag brunch with their families result in felony charges for parents and event organizers? Would entire pride festivals be shut down for fear of prosecution? For that matter, you know what? Let's go out on a big limb here. What about Halloween? Okay, what if you have a group of teenage boys running around town dressed in drag as their Halloween costume? Are the police going to pick them up and have them arrested for going trick-or-treating? Come on, Robert, do better. The answer to all of the above is almost certainly yes, and that's the point. The language of the bill is designed not to clarify existing laws, but to weaponize them against LGBTQ plus spaces and events. Leadbeter frames his bill as a defense of traditional family values and parental rights, whatever those are. But whose family values? Whose parental rights? Certainly not those of LGBTQ plus parents who want to raise their children with pride in their identities, and certainly not those of supportive parents who believe in teaching their children about diversity, acceptance, and joy, something you probably never had as a kid, Robert. Am I wrong? And let's be real. Drag is not inherently sexual. Just ask Mr. Shakespeare. Okay, back in the 1630s, all of the performers that ever got on stage were men. Women were not allowed on stage. And in order for a woman's part to be portrayed in the 1590s through the early 1600s in England, you had to have a man dressed in drag. And you know what? In the 1940s and 50s, Uncle Milty would come on television week after week, thanks to Texaco, and he would portray himself in women's clothing. By 1994, he stood on stage right next to RuPaul as they were giving away the VMA Awards that year. And Milton Berle made a comment about, coming out on stage in a dress and how that wouldn't feel right anymore. And RuPaul shot back with, well, that's because you're wearing a diaper. For those of you who don't know who Milton Berle is, look it up. In any case, drag is, in fact, an art form, a celebration of performance, gender play, and self-expression, and that's the whole point. Leadbeter's attempt to conflate drag with sexually explicit content is the same tired, dangerous rhetoric that has been used to demonize queer people for decades. If he were genuinely concerned about the welfare of children, perhaps he'd address real issues, like the ongoing crisis of gun violence in school, or the alarming rise in youth homelessness, particularly among the same LGBTQ plus youth he's been targeting with other ridiculous legislation, or the devastating mental health crisis affecting young people across the state. Instead, he's choosing to focus on drag queens because attacking LGBTQ plus people is an easy way for him in his little county out in eastern Pennsylvania to score political points with his base. Go ahead, Robert. You go right ahead and do that, but this is not happening in a vacuum. Pennsylvania is just the latest battleground in a nationwide conservative crusade against LGBTQ plus rights. Similar bills have popped up across the country, from Tennessee's anti-drag law, which was struck down as unconstitutional. I don't know so much about that. We've got another story on that later. To Florida's Don't Say Gay policies. If Leadbeter's bill passes, Pennsylvania would join the ranks of states attempting to erase queer culture and history under the guise of protecting children, and it's horse crap. Utter horse crap. Make no mistake, this is about erasure. If pride festivals can't legally allow minors to attend because there are drag performances, then pride as we know it is gone. If LGBTQ plus events fear prosecution, they will either be canceled or forced underground. As for drag time story hours at libraries, which have been popular in other states, well, he's going to put Pennsylvania on the map as being one of the first to ban drag queens from reading in libraries. But you know what's really crazy? How many of the stories in the children's section involve fairy princesses? Where do you think they got the idea? This is what state-sponsored oppression looks like, and it starts with people like Representative Robert Leadbeter. His bill is an attack, but we are not defenseless. Pennsylvania's queer community has fought too hard to be erased now. This is our home. This is our community. We're not going anywhere. Except I am, because that's it for our news blast at this hour. Be sure, if you're over watching us on YouTube, to click the subscribe button and download the Live 365 app so you can take PEP Radio with you wherever you go. Again, that's our news blast for this hour. Coming up next, it's the local area weather forecast for the Meadville area here on PEP Radio.